What's going on, guys? Gabe the Great back here again, and today we're going to be covering a new WNBA topic, so let's get right into it. So one of the many issues with the WNBA is not just player salaries, but player accommodation, right? And this week there was a big story when it came to player accommodation. So what happened was the Indiana Fever had just finished a game in Seattle, and so they were supposed to catch a plane with a slight layover in Atlanta back to Indiana because they had another game like a night after, so about a day rest, a day or two rest before their next game. Unlike NBA players, which gets their own private jets, WNBA players often have to fly commercial. So Natalie Ochonwa, I believe that's her name, she is a player on the Indiana Fever, and she ended up documenting this whole thing on Twitter, which was actually quite entertaining. And I'll put it up right here for you as we kind of go through it. So they were supposed to leave at 7:45, but then their flight got delayed to 10:30. Then it got delayed again to 11:30. So it wasn't until 1 a.m., about 12:50 a.m., that they actually got to board the plane, and they finally got to Atlanta about 8:45 in the morning. But when they got to Atlanta, every flight to Indy was already overbooked, and they had an 18-person travel party, so they decided to bus it from Atlanta to Indiana, a short little 8-hour journey. And mind you, as she said in the thread, you know, they got to play Minnesota the following night. They end up having to switch drivers because the one that they had isn't allowed to drive long. And then they had to make a second stop because they had another bus issue, another mechanical issue with their bus. So overall, it took them about 22 hours of travel, and they only had about 23 hours before their next game. Look, I travel, I live in Oregon, and my family lives in Georgia, near Atlanta. So I know how much just that one flight can be because of the time zone difference when you're going from coast to coast, and just everything that entails with being at the airport, uncomfortable seats, and if you gotta wait, and all the delayed flights. And so I feel for those ladies. That is a tough thing to have to deal with. But what this really did was this highlighted, one of the many issues in the WNBA. And so people were talking about this all over Twitter, all over the internet, and it brought up a lot of different things in the conversation. I believe that this whole thing got several thousand retweets, and so a lot of people were talking about it. This person on Twitter said, "This is sad. Meanwhile, NBA teams have their own private jets. The women play better than the..." All right, let's try this again. "The women play better than the men, but are treated like this and barely make $100,000 a season." Shake my head. I was with her all the way to the point where she said the women play better than the men. Right after that, she lost me. I told you guys, there's women's basketball and there's men's basketball. Let's not compare the two. Let's just not even get into that debate because we go nowhere with it. But this does highlight some very important issues with the WNBA. Aside from their salary, they had a terrible collective bargaining agreement. As we know, the WNBA players, they opted out of their CBA, which I've said from the beginning was the wise thing to do because of stuff like this. Now you gotta understand, this is the collective bargaining agreement that the players union signed with the owners. So when they went into their last negotiations, they didn't negotiate accommodations. So part of that has nothing to do with compensation of players. Part of that has to do with the negotiation skills or lack thereof of the Players Association, the WNBA Players Association. Hopefully they do a way better job of negotiating this year so they can get these sort of things worked out and accommodated. But here's something that I was thinking about when it comes to the WNBA, and I've always said, like, obviously women can play basketball. I coach girls basketball. I don't have a problem with women's basketball. Love the game. But the issue with the WNBA is the WNBA itself. Like, the brand, the league is broken, and these sort of things highlight it. These sort of things highlight what is broken, not just with the owners, but with the Players Association. The Players Association, they they, up to this point, they haven't negotiated well in these collective bargaining agreements. I mean, there was a time where Lisa Leslie was getting paid, you know, nearly $250,000 to play in the WNBA. Now, there was a secondary league that she kind of threatened to go to, but there was a time where players were getting paid more than they get now. But again, that has to do with the Players Association and the owners. That has nothing to do with us as fans. You know, like if you're having a dispute as a union with your owners, like don't pass that down to us, the fans. Like that's got nothing to do with us. Like why are we suffering as well? Or why does it put the blame on us? Why do people always, and what people always try to do, they always try to make it about men and women. Oh, women don't get as much as men do. It's like, no. The WNBA has been around for 20 years. The NBA has been around for 80 years. And I was actually shocked because when I went through the comment section, I actually saw a lot of women actually chiming in on this conversation, actually correcting a lot of this flawed logic. That a lot of this is economics. A lot of this is the players need to negotiate better in their collective bargaining agreement. And a lot of this is just time. A lot of this is just the WNBA is a young league. It's only 20 years old. The NBA is 80 years old. Women have only been allowed to play college basketball since the 1970s. So obviously there's still a long way to go in women's sports, and it'll get there, I believe. Will it ever have the mass appeal that I believe that men's athletic has or men's basketball do? I really don't, but I do think that the WNBA can carve out a niche market and really be able to survive like that. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think about sort of this kind of awful situation with travel accommodations? Besides the increase in salaries, what else do you guys think the WNBA players needs to include in their collective bargaining agreement just to make the overall experience of the league a lot better? Chime in down below. Let me know what you think. Like it if you like it. Go follow me on Twitter. I'll be over there talking to myself. And I'll see you next time. Peace.